In this video, we're going to make this outdoor storage locker to use on a deck, carport, or garage. I hope you enjoy it. So it's summer and the usual junk has migrated its way to my deck and carport. It's fishing gear, an inflatable boat, stuff for washing the car, fuel for the pellet smoker, gardening tools, you name it. This is what we got to deal with. The first step is to lay out a simple box. I use Google SketchUp. Basically cabinet style construction, panel sides and panel doors. I had to put a break in the doors just because I'm using scrap and that's all the plywood I had. I bought some regular lumber, nothing fancy here. That's all 2x4s and 2x6s from the local big box store. Now the lumber that you buy at the big box has a convenience edge on it, and it's also not really flat or not really straight, so it might be a waste of time, but I went ahead and ran all of the pieces through the joiner and then through the thicknesser so that they were all the same dimension and would make reasonable panels. After joining and thicknessing, we've got parts for door stiles and rails, side panel stiles and rails, as well as the center divider of the doors. And the next step is simply to put a groove in it. The rails get a groove on 3 sides, and the stiles get a groove on just 1 side. And then the center stiles get a groove on all 4 sides. With the stiles and rails cut, I've got the finished dimensions of the side panels and the doors. I can go ahead and rip out the plywood to make the inserts. I really hate pocket holes. I hate using them for anything other than outdoor items such as this. I use the heavy-duty, larger size of the pocket holes. I used them a lot when I was doing my deck, so I don't mind using them for this, but I'm not a pocket hole fan, let's say that. It's fiddly and time-consuming, but in terms of putting together strong panels that'll last outside, they work, and I don't mind using them here. Down and dirty outdoor grade cabinetry, instead of doing mortise and tenon on the panels and doors, I've simply cut a matching piece of plywood strip to use as a floating tenon for the doors and panel, and the floating tenon allows you to line up the slots and as if there was a tenon, clamp them together, drive home the pocket screws, insert the floating plywood panel, use a couple more floating tenons, and put the last piece on, and it should be good to go, and it doesn't need to stay clamped. The doors are the same way, the same floating tenon with just the plywood strip using the groove that was cut in the stiles and rails. A little more fiddly because you've got that middle piece to get in and get it positioned just right so that you don't lock it down and not leave enough room for the 2 floating panels. But with a little bit of patience, it comes together fairly well. So we have two large doors and two smaller sides. And now we will go take them and build the frame outside. Because the doors are rather heavy, they're pretty big, I'm using interior grade door hinges and not cabinet grade hinges, so I've got to go ahead and route a recess in the carcass side panel to go ahead and accept that, do it with a router, and freehand it as close to the line as I dare, then clean up with a chisel, test fit the hinge, and it should be good to go. The hinge is put on with a self-centering drill bit to go ahead and get the holes lined up. Once it's in, you're sort of stuck, and you don't want your door canted at an angle that'll make lineup difficult. So those self-centering bits work really well. With the doors and sides made, the only thing left is something to connect them. So here I've made a bunch of stringers to run between the side panels, and I'm putting pocket holes, yes, the dreaded pocket hole, putting them in so the assembly will be pretty seamless when I carry the whole kit and caboodle out to the deck area. So here we've got the two sides lined up and the back stretcher temporarily clamped to the deck it's going against. With the pre-drilled pocket holes, it's pretty straightforward just to get them lined up level and screw them in place. You'll note I put a little cleat on the stretcher so that I could clamp against it. Since it's not visible, there's no real worry about leaving a mark from the screw holes, and I move that cleat around each time, because one of the disadvantages of pocket hole screws is they tend to want to move the work, so you always have to have it clamped in tight before you drive them in. I did the same with the lower stretchers. As the upper stretchers, just connected them to the sides with pocket holes to make somewhat of a freestanding carcass. Line them up, put them in, and drive the pocket holes home. Also did the same treatment on some stringers that will run along the top and bottom just to give it some structure. Here I've got the boat, the inflatable boat, temporarily put in place so I can figure out where the divider needs to be. Once it's figured out, I can drive it home with some more dreaded pocket screws. But these outdoor ones, they hold fairly well, so I'll cut them some slack. And here I am putting the top stringers on. You can see the bottom stringers are already in place. Since these aren't really structural, I'm just putting one on each side so it can't twist or can't, but it's there really just to give the top something to screw to. This is a trick my dad taught me a long time ago. In order to get the hinge lined up right, I'm putting acrylic paint on the inside, and I have a ledger board propped up on the ground with the door resting, so the two doors rest perfectly parallel. And now I'll simply sandwich them to the hinges lined up where I want them. It will mark the exact location of where I need to mount the hinge. I could do it by measurement, but if your hinge is slightly off, you'll end up with a door that's tight or canted. Once it's marked, I did not mortise in these because I don't mind the little gap, though I did pre-drill the holes and go ahead and install the hinge. Since where the cabinet's going is not level, there's a little rack between the sides, and so one of the doors is hitting the bottom before the top. That's a pretty easy fix. Just to counteract the rack, I'll put a wedge in to rotate that one side slightly. And if I get it right, the doors go together. They both reach the top at the same point. The final step is with the doors coming in together is to adjust the gap between them. So I've taken one off and scribed a line, and I'll plane down to that line. With the doors on, I've just used regular decking to make a top. It's inexpensive, durable, easy to obtain. I clamp them all tight against the back so that it minimizes the gap, and drive them along in the stringers. With the top on, it's a simple task to lay out a line where you want it and cut off the excess so it looks like they were all put in exactly right, and you don't have to worry about lining them up as you put them on. Since this area is sheltered, it's not subject to the elements. I did not use treated wood, but I'm still going to put a stain on, and this is TWP deck stain, which I think deck stain is great for any outdoor furniture. What can I say about putting stain on? It's sort of hard to do it wrong. I started with a brush and ended up with a rag. I always go back to a rag, but thought I'd give the brush a try again. Wipe it on, let it sit a bit, wipe it off, evaluate if you want more. But for where this piece is going to be, one good coat and I'm happy. It's the same stain I'm going to use when I redo the deck here in a few weeks, so it will generally match. It's a pleasing color. The hardware is a latch catch for the left-hand door and a lock cylinder for the right-hand door, so that it will hold the right-hand door to the left. Pretty straightforward to put on. I marked the center, the top line of the stringer behind the door, and installed the latch catch with 2 screws. The cylinder goes on with a 3/4 inch hole spaced far enough away that it doesn't create a weak point in the wood, but close enough that the latch arm still will come out. It's a fairly straightforward process. I had to look around a good while to find a cylinder lock that would work with such large doors, but if you look around, you can find them. So the left door latches and the right door then locks to the left door. So opening's pretty straightforward. You open the right door and you unlatch the left door, and closing it up is just the reverse. So that's it for the cabinet. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it gets you inspired to do something with your pile of junk on your deck or in your carport, and that all of your projects go well. Thanks for watching.